The entire NFL world seems to be uniting over Lamar Jackson MVP, at least for the most part, and the Ravens and Steelers are set to face off in a wild card bout. All that and more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today on this Monday, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every day as well. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, also in audio form, where you can follow along and subscribe as well. We're a 5-day-a-week plus more daily Ravens podcast. So every weekday, we have an episode that comes out at 6 a.m. Eastern time. We also do bonus episodes on the weekend as the headlines sometimes have us do those, or just other pieces of big news. We go live after every Ravens game, after every piece of Ravens big news, like we did last night, because the Ravens and Steelers are officially facing off, and we had to go live to talk about officially having that matchup set. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. It's playoff time. Whole new season starts. Ravens and Steelers will be facing off, and we're going to talk a lot about that on today's show, because that's the big storyline, or at least one of them. Ravens have an opportunity here to be really special, go on a really special run, and it all starts with your most hated division rival. And I think, from a storybook perspective, certainly the first chapter here, and honestly, this is kind of crazy because it's actually the 12-year anniversary of Ray Lewis's last home game at M&T Bank Stadium against the Colts, when the Ravens took down the Colts in the wild card round. So obviously things have changed a little since then. There's an extra week on the NFL season, so things get pushed back. But regardless, the Ravens have a big opportunity. So we'll dive into all of that. Ravens, Steelers, how they match up, stuff we talked about on the live stream. So if you haven't caught that yet, it was a really fun time. We had a lot of people in there. Be sure to go back and watch that. But in the first part of the show, I think it's really crazy because it feels like the entire NFL world almost is uniting on a Lamar Jackson MVP. Now, obviously, it's not everybody, and I don't want to make it sound like it's everybody. Right now, at least, Josh Allen is still the favorite on FanDuel, minus 270. Lamar is plus 200. At least that's the last I've seen. Maybe it's changed by the time you're watching or listening to this episode. But former players, big personalities, it feels like everything that I've seen for the most part over the past couple of days have really been like, okay, hey, I think Lamar's MVP, or I'm going to vote for Lamar here, this, that, and the other. So we'll talk about some of the narratives that are being pushed for Lamar Jackson, and then some for Josh Allen. But of course, the big storyline is going to be the Steelers. So be sure we're going to talk about that in the second and third parts of the show. But this is another big headline, so we have to talk about that as well. Also, I know I'm coming through a little more crisp and clean. At least I hope I am, because this is a new computer. Finally, I've been needing a new computer for a couple of years. But hey, you know what? Computers, you try to find the right one, the one that's going to be best for you. Plus, they cost a little bit of money too. So, had to make the time right. And I thought, playoffs starting up, time was right, stars aligned. So this is just the first of many upgrades I'm going to have to the setup in video form and audio form as well, and do some major upgrades over the course of the rest of the playoffs and in the offseason. And if none of them come during the playoffs, it's definitely coming during the offseason. But without further ado, let's talk about some Ravens content here. Let's talk about the entire NFL world seemingly uniting on Lamar MVP. Now, again, there are some that are not in this category and that don't believe Lamar is the MVP. And that's okay. I'm not trying to say Lamar is going to run away with this unanimously. He shouldn't. Josh Allen's having a great season. But really, all I've seen is a lot of big people, players, personality, whoever it is, coming to Lamar Jackson's defense. Ryan Clark, who said Lamar is his MVP, he talked about how Lamar should not be punished for having Derrick Henry on his team, where that has been a big media narrative that is being spun. Brian McFadden, former Steelers cornerback, you got a couple of former Steelers guys saying that Lamar has deserved the MVP. He deserves to be the MVP. That's what Brian McFadden said. He said Lamar Jackson has earned the right to win the MVP award. And it feels like with the whole situation with these former players, I mean, Shannon Sharp took to Twitter after the Ravens game and said, give that man his MVP, 41 TD passes, 4 interceptions, 900 rushing, second highest passer rating in NFL history. Well, it's fourth now, but still, division champs. L. Jackson has earned the MVP this season. Go and debate yourself. You have even Deebo Samuel won on a show. I can't remember what show it was, so I apologize. Deebo Samuel saying his MVP is Lamar Jackson. James Palmer, NFL media personality, said that his MVP is Lamar Jackson. So, look, Josh has had a great season, but when you compare side-by-side stats, Lamar Jackson, 5,087 total yards. Josh Allen, 4,262. Lamar, 45 total touchdowns compared to Josh's 40. 4 interceptions for Lamar compared to Josh's 6. 119.6 passer rating for Lamar, 101.4 for Josh, 77.8 QBR, 76.9 QBR. That's Lamar and Josh respectively. 12-5 quarterback record, 13-3 quarterback record for Josh because people are not going to count the game against the Patriots, which the Bills honestly hilariously went out there and lost to the Patriots, so they didn't get the number 1 overall pick. Strength of schedule, 0.529 for Lamar Jackson, 0.465 for Josh Allen, and there are a bunch of other metrics as well. Josh had more rushing touchdowns, right? It's true. But I think the stats so heavily favor Lamar to the point where I don't think the quarterback record thing or the seeding thing makes that big of an impact because it's 1 seed and it's 2 losses. If you want to include the Bills losing to the Patriots, I'm not going to do that because I don't think it's fair to Josh, but it's 2 losses. I'm going to say 2. Some people will say 1. I'm going to say 2. Regardless, I don't think that that's enough to say, okay, well, let's ignore the strength of schedule. Let's ignore the stats. Let's ignore some of the other stuff. Does Lamar have a better supporting cast? Sure. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Lamar has no help. Josh has help too, but I get Lamar's supporting cast is better, and Josh Allen elevates talent, but Lamar Jackson elevates talent as well. And I think you see that even like we're going to talk about the Steelers in that playoff matchup. The thing that pops off the film to me, like, for example, Manuel Acho has talked about how, oh, well, Josh is a guy that if you want film first and stats second, yeah, that's Josh. But, oh, Lamar, he's stats first, but film second. No, the thing with Lamar is he pops off the film too. And Darren Orlovsky was praising Lamar during the broadcast on Saturday, but also said that Josh is more valuable to his team and that whole narrative as well. The Steelers, they made a conscious decision to try to stop Lamar Jackson from having an impact with his legs in that second matchup. And this is what we're going to talk about a little bit with the matchup with the wild card is that's the gravity of Lamar Jackson. Like you look at the film, every play Lamar pops up on the film. I mean, that just is what it is. Josh does too. Like Josh and Lamar have that gravity to them, but it's just different with Lamar. And people can talk about, okay, the sacks and this, that, and the other, like what's going on here, evading. Both guys can evade sacks. But, man, how many situations have both those quarterbacks been in where they've made something out of nothing? Josh does it a ton, but so does Lamar. So I'm not talking about last year, right? I know a lot of narratives have come out about last season, about the MVP, and Lamar didn't have the stats for it, this, that, and the other. I don't think look, Dak had a great season last year. Brock Purdy had a great season last year, but Lamar beat Brock Purdy head-to-head. Ravens were the best regular season team in the NFL by a mile, by a wide margin. It's not that way for Josh Allen and the Bills this season. There's a much smaller gap. Like if the Bills had the dominant season the Ravens did, they were the number 1 seed, or just absolutely walloping teams left and right week after week, then yes, Josh Allen would win the MVP. But it just feels like everybody in the NFL world right now, I mean, James Jones, Robert Griffin III, Cam Newton, like everybody is talking about it. And look, who knows who actually is going to win it? Because again, just people talking about it does not reflect who actually is going to win the award. It feels like there's been a lot of stuff pushed about Josh Allen. And if Josh wins it, he's had a heck of a season. But in my opinion, Lamar should be the MVP, but the Ravens have a lot bigger goals than just an MVP, right? I mean, Lamar's talked about the award and how it's a team award for him, but John Harbaugh, I think, said it best. You haven't heard a lot of talk in that building about it. Lamar doesn't really talk about it. Like, they want to win a Super Bowl, and now we know who the Ravens are going to play in the first round of the playoffs, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers, the team that has given Lamar Jackson the most problems over the course of his career, but he was able to rid that. He was able to get rid of all that negative energy a couple of weeks ago when the Ravens absolutely demolished the Steelers and stole their soul, snatched them in the fourth quarter of that game. So I know the MVP talk is all fine and dandy, but at the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things, Super Bowl is much more important by 10 million miles. Coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk about the Ravens and Steelers being set for a wild card bout. All that and more coming up on Locked On Ravens. Do not go anywhere. First, the show is brought to you by LinkedIn. Growing your small business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. And let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in with the strongest hiring data available. LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. I've used LinkedIn Jobs myself, and I can tell you it's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. Small businesses are wearing a lot of hats, so every hire is crucial. LinkedIn gets that. That's why they connect you with the best candidates using data you won't find anywhere else. From unique skills and interests to the connections you share, LinkedIn helps you find the right person for the job. In fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high-quality candidates. I know from experience how important it is to make the right hiring decisions. Having access to insights like what skills candidates have or how they're connected to your network, that helps you feel confident when you pull the trigger. Hire smarter this year and find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And the show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions, reach financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. We're back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Monday edition of the show. It's playoff time, and we are going to dive into all of that here. And we're going to do it throughout the week, too. The Ravens officially play on Saturday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Ravens and Steelers at the bank. I mean, that's the atmosphere you want. That's the game you want. Going to be electric, and hopefully we can talk about it for years to come, because the Ravens hopefully will win the game. So we have so much Ravens coverage coming your way here on Locked On Ravens. Be sure to tell a friend and tell a family member as well. If they want some daily Ravens coverage, they want some excitement leading up to the playoffs with news, analysis, updates, we have them covered over here on this show 5 days per week, plus more. Bring in daily Ravens coverage each and every single day. And I feel smoother and crisper here with this new computer. I'm absolutely loving this. It feels like, and again, it's great to have stats up. So long story short, my computer could only have the streaming tab open to actually record these episodes. I could have nothing else up while I was doing it. So I was looking down on my phone for stats, down on my phone for transcripts, like trying to figure all that out. Feels nice to actually have everything on the screen that I can actually pull up and talk about. So let's pull it up and let's talk about it. Ravens and Steelers split the series 1-1. Steelers took the first matchup at their house, and then the Ravens took it right back at their own house. This is an intriguing matchup to me for a couple of different reasons. I know a lot of people maybe thought that, the Chargers were the better matchup for the Ravens. I personally was also in that category, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter who Baltimore plays. Like, they're going to line it up. They're going to play. I think this is going to be a much more physical game than what the Chargers and Ravens game would have been. The Ravens know the Steelers know the Ravens, and that's just not from this season. Obviously, they played 2 games every single season. And Steelers are a defense that's really good. Now, the pass defense for Pittsburgh, that's the weak point for them. They're 19th in the league in pass defense, but their rushing defense is 6th. And we talked about this on the live stream last night, but this is strength on strength, because obviously Baltimore's rushing offense versus the Steelers' rushing defense, that's going to be strength on strength. But the good part about the Ravens offense is that the Ravens passing offense is also super explosive and very, very good. Obviously, they are the best passing offense in the NFL. This is the best offense in the NFL. Number 3 scoring offense going up against the number 7 scoring defense in the Pittsburgh Steelers. So look, there are names you have to worry about on Pittsburgh, right? Obviously, talk about the defensive side of the ball. TJ Watt, you circle him as the number 1 guy, but then it's Minkah Fitzpatrick, Cam Hayward, Patrick Queen, Joey Porter Jr., Keanu Benton, Deshaun Elliott. I mean, they have so many guys. Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig. They have some dudes on that defense. I don't expect this to be a very high-scoring game, but I think if the Ravens can get that momentum play, it could really shift things. And Darius Washington was the guy who got that in the first matchup with Russell Wilson. But if you want to talk about Russ and that Steelers offense, I think it's a great matchup for the Ravens defense, especially this new look Ravens defense with the past defense they've had over the last month and a half to 2 months here. It's been incredible, and it should continue to stay that way because when you talked about Ravens Chargers, and we talked about that a little bit on yesterday's episode, where the Chargers have by far the better quarterback. Russell Wilson, he has the advantage in terms of playoff experience and being in those pressure moments. He's obviously a Super Bowl champion and has been there multiple times, but this is not Seattle Russell Wilson. And he's made multiple mistakes, just boneheaded mistakes in both of the Ravens games that he's played Baltimore this year in. The first one where they were in Pittsburgh, threw that ball up to Darnell Washington. And Darnell didn't really jump for the ball, but still, I mean, you can get 3 points out of that and you throw an interception in the end zone. That's just bad awareness. And then the second game, obviously it was the tuck the ball run and try to lay the hit stick on Darius Washington. And Darius said, no, actually, I'm going to do it to you. And he fumbles the ball. Ravens recover. And that was the momentum shifter. Even in the game against Cincinnati on Saturday, Russ had the opportunity to either throw the ball away or cut it out of bounds with the Steelers only having 1 timeout. He instead tries to lay the hit stick and gets like 1 extra yard, but he bleeds 25 seconds off the clock. Like, this game is going to come down, in my opinion, to a couple of things, and it's things we've all talked about. If you're an everydayer, you've heard me, we've talked about it all the time. It's going to come down to turnovers, first of all. It's going to come down to penalties, and it's going to come down to the Ravens not beating themselves. If the Ravens play their game, they will win. All right, if the Ravens go out there and they play up to their standard, they will win. That's been the MO for this team all season. The games that they haven't won have been the games where they've committed too many penalties. They've made too many bad mistakes. There were bad coaching decisions, bad execution, whatever it was. If they can play up to their standard, they will be fine. But the Steelers are a really good turnover defense. They're the best turnover defense in the NFL. They forced 33 of them this year. And that's going to be a really big thing because we've seen the team that wins the turnover battle in both of these Ravens and Steelers games, or at least gets that momentum from turnovers. That has been, in my opinion, the difference in 2024 between these two teams. First matchup, it was Derrick Henry in that early fumble. Then Lamar Jackson with that, we're not going to really call that an interception because it was in Justice Hill's hands and Peyton Wilson just kind of like ripped it away. So, I mean, it was a great throw from Lamar, just an even better play from Peyton Wilson. But still, the turnover battle was a huge factor in why Pittsburgh was able to win that game despite not even scoring a touchdown against Baltimore that week. But then you flip it over to the other game. Ravens had incredible fumble luck. I would not anticipate it. Like, that was an all-time fumble luck game, in my opinion, from the Ravens. I would not expect them to have that again. They cannot rely on that. But that's what defined the game. It was the Ravens fumbling and the Ravens recovering, and then the Steelers fumbling and the Ravens recovering. There was only one fumble that didn't go the Ravens' way, and that was when Jaylen Warren fumbled and he was able to get it back. But other than that, Baltimore had all that luck on their side. So if they can get a Russ interception or two, if they can force a fumble on a Najee Harris or Jaylen Warren, whoever it's going to be, that's going to be a huge part of this. Obviously, penalties kind of speak for themselves. Baltimore has been pretty bad in that department all season. I think it was a little discouraging for people to see the Cleveland game go the way it did, at least in the penalty department. And I don't blame you. It was certainly, I think, a step back in that direction. But this game is going to be a lot of physical play. And with physical play, it's going to depend obviously on who the referee crew actually is for this game. But I mean, depending on who it is, they're either going to let stuff go or they're going to call it really tight. And in the playoffs, each mistake is magnified. Each mistake is magnified. So I would probably say, I mean, again, it really depends on who the ref is. But if I had to give a general just blanket statement, I would assume the refs will let people play a little more in the playoffs. Like I think, and especially at home, like the home cooking factor is real. And I think that could play a huge role in it as well. So that's another reason why I wanted the home playoff game for the Ravens. But it just I think that either way I was fine. Like if the Chargers were the matchup, okay, that's great. Love the matchup. Steelers are the matchup. All right, you know what? That's the toughest wild card team that they could have played. This is their toughest first round matchup, in my opinion, that they could have had between the Texans if they had lost the division, the Chargers, and whoever it was going to be in the 7th seed between the Broncos, Bengals, Dolphins. It ends up being the Broncos, obviously. But this is what the Ravens want, right? And Nick Moore, another guy, right? Long snapper Nick Moore for the Ravens, who he also went on a rant about Lamar being his MVP, which does not surprise anybody. And he admitted himself he's biased, but he made a point about Lamar and saying, we've seen Mike Vick, we've seen all these great guys, but no one's seen Lamar Jackson. But my point is that he's come on, I do some work with the Ryan Rickman show, and he said that, look, you don't want to get a team that's not at their best. Like as a competitor, you want to beat the best. To be the best, you have to beat the best. And the Ravens have that opportunity. I mentioned this on the live stream last night with the Colts, the Broncos, and the Patriots to get to the Super Bowl in 2012, 2013. You now have an opportunity to go Steelers, Bills, Chiefs for the Super Bowl. That's a really tough run. But man, we look back at that 2012, 2013 team is so rewarding because of how tough that run was for them and how they were able to pull that out. I'm hoping we can say the same thing about this run. And I think they have an opportunity to, because as I've said, if the Ravens play their game, I don't see a team that can beat them. But if there are mishaps here and there will be, this is the playoffs, there will be, and these are good teams the Ravens are playing. I just feel like the other part of it is the Steelers are playing terrible football right now. And that's not the be all end all. I think you kind of cut off regular season and postseason. It's a whole new season and anything can happen. But it also comes down to there's drama off the field for the Steelers right now. Patrick Queen, Cam Hayward, George Pickens, and like bold letters, because it feels like a lot of that is coming from him. But that can disjoint a locker room, can disjoint a team. So going to be an intriguing game. I'm really excited for it. Again, Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. You absolutely love that. The prime Ravens-Steelers games. Hopefully this will be another one for the history books with a Ravens W. But we still have a lot to talk about with that game because there are some Zay Flowers updates. Nothing too different from what we've heard, but it seems to be the common theme and the common message. So we'll talk about the latest on that at the time of this recording, plus how the Ravens could combat his potential absence. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to here on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. So for this Ravens and Steelers wild card matchup, Ravens open up as 9.5-point favorites at home. So if you like the Ravens as the home favorite or the Steelers as the road underdog, be sure to pick your side over on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We are back, Locked On Ravens, Monday edition. Kevin Ostreicher still rocking out with you here. I didn't go anywhere. I'm still here. I'm especially still here because of this new computer we got going on. And, man, I'm excited for all the changes, good changes, obviously, to the setup and the audio and the video and everything we're going to make here on Locked On Ravens, because I am truly dedicated to bringing the best 5-day-a-week Ravens coverage, plus more that I can. And obviously, I've been rocking with my same setup now for a couple years, and I think it's time to make some changes because man, every couple of years, you got to get a little something new, in my opinion. So I'm excited to do all that. But the Ravens content, that's not going anywhere here on Locked On Ravens. We do 5 days a week. This is episode 1416 consecutively, dating back to the middle of August of 2019, my first ever episode. Get ready for, you might want to sit down for this throwback name. Kari Vedvik was my first ever episode. We talked about him. Second ever episode was Jadeveon Clowney and whether he would get traded to the Ravens. That was when he went to Seattle, and eventually he made his way to Baltimore. So I've been doing this for a little while here on Locked On Ravens, and I can't wait to keep it going. Hopefully this postseason cover a Super Bowl run. But regardless, it's been a great time. We've built great communities here on Locked On Ravens, and if you've been a part of those communities, thank you so much. If you're an everydayer, you've listened or watched before, or if you're new and you want to become a part of the community, hit the like and subscribe button in video form, follow along in audio form, and subscribe over there as well. Social media, ChaosSharker34 on Twitter, Instagram, subtext. You can subscribe over there as well. So, man, it's a lot we're doing over here on Locked On Ravens, and I love every single second of it. But Zay Flowers is the big name for this game in terms of injuries for the Ravens. You know, you hate that it happened the way that it did. A clear accident, obviously. Zay's just in a weird spot, and Andrew Voorhees kind of coming over top of him and hitting his leg as it was going one way. Now, the initial reports is that it's a knee sprain and that there is a real possibility he misses the wild card week, but could be back for the divisional. And this is something I've talked about. If you are an everydayer on Locked On Ravens, you know I've gone on this rant before. It's if a week or two lengthwise injury happens, it will be like, oh, okay, if that happens in week 3, all right, cool. They'll be back week maybe 6 maximum. Or happens in week 10, okay, cool. They'll be back like week 12, week 13. If it happens the week before the playoffs start, that's like, oh, we're all of a sudden missing our biggest offensive weapon. And you're sitting to yourself, if you're the Ravens, saying, when is he going to come back? We need Zay. We need Zay. So from an organizational perspective, obviously not great. And I'm glad that it wasn't more serious, right? I'm glad that Zay is okay in terms of like it not being a major catastrophic injury. It looks like this is what we know right now. Maybe something will come. I'm sure something will maybe come out over the course of today or tomorrow. John Harbaugh, I'm very sure, is going to keep this as close to the vest as possible for as long as he can because he wants no competitive advantage. But with the knee sprain, the thing that I worry about a little bit, and I'll be honest about this, thing I worry about a little, and this is obviously from watching the Ravens failed playoff runs a couple of times over the last 6 seasons and further than that, but it reminds me of Mark Andrews in 2019 or even Mark Andrews last season where just wasn't fully healthy for the game and couldn't make an impact. I mean, the last 2 playoff runs, the like deep ones the Ravens have had in terms of divisional round, bye week, I guess that wasn't a really deep one, but you know what I mean, number 1 seed playoff runs, Mark wasn't healthy for either of those. So this is going to be the first big playoff run Mark is healthy for in terms of like number 1 seed 2019, got injured and wasn't himself. And Mark Ingram also was injured for that game. You remember that? Mark wasn't his 100% self. So I think that this maybe, hopefully, won't be that situation, but there's always a possibility that it could be. And that's a little concerning for me, but there's just not enough new information. Like we're getting little updates here, little updates there. Maybe we'll hear something over the next couple of days, but the Ravens will have to find a way to combat this. If Zay does not play, I think that does give Pittsburgh an advantage, especially if they want to go man, which they're going to want to do. So it's going to be up to Rashad Bateman. They'll probably use him a little bit more in motion. Obviously, Isaiah Likely's going to have a much bigger role, Mark Andrews, but it's going to come down to guys like Tylan Wallace, Nelson Aguilar, Tez Walker. We'll kind of see how that all plays out. But we also have to acknowledge, and, you know, we're fair here on Locked On Ravens. We take the positives. We take the negatives. We look at everything. We have to remember that the Steelers were definitely not at full strength when the Ravens played them last. There was no George Pickens. There was no Deshaun Elliott. Joey Porter Jr. left. There was no Dante Jackson. Larry Ogunjobi didn't play. Those guys, for the most part, are all healthy now. At least relative. They all played except for Dante Jackson in week 18. So I think that adds more of a challenge, but I still feel good about it. And mainly it's because I don't think the Steelers have the offensive firepower to hang with the Ravens if they get going. Now, if the Steelers can slop this game up, That's how they win it. Like the, 18-16 final score the Steelers had all the way back a couple months ago. That's how they win this game. If you want to go touchdown for touchdown with the Ravens, if you're the Steelers, I just don't think they have that in them. So maybe I'm wrong. And if I am wrong, I'll acknowledge it. I'll admit it. I don't shy away from that. But I think that the Steelers, it's just tough because you don't know what's going to come with this game. It's more uncertain, I would say, especially with the whole AFC North thing and Ravens Steelers, where you throw everything out and it's just a blank slate for everybody. You kind of intensify that for the playoffs because it's a blank slate on top of a blank slate on top of another blank slate. So I think that there's so many other storylines we could talk about. I could go on for hours and hours and hours here, and we're going to have the opportunity over the course of the rest of the week to talk about it because I think there's so many other things that we can dive into. But even if you want to talk about like sacks, pass rush, offensive line for both teams is going to have to be huge. And I'll say this again too. I mentioned a couple of reasons or a couple of things that will define this game. I think, like I've said, and this actually rang true for both games against the Steelers, so I think it'll ring true again. Whichever offensive line plays better will come out on top. Whichever team's offensive line plays better will come out on top. That is my opinion on that. I feel like, again, Lamar can evade sacks. Russ can move out of the pocket a little bit as well. Not to the level of Lamar can, obviously, but you got to protect your quarterback. You got to open rushing lanes. And whichever offensive line does a better job at that, I think will propel their team to victory. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. First show with the new computer. It's in the books. I think this was a great show. I think it worked really well. It was really nice to have everything up in front of me and not have to worry. Plus, my computer overheated sometimes during streams, so I would have to stop and then start again. So this went really smoothly, and we're going to, again, upgrade everything over the course of the next couple of months. Really excited for all of that as well. I'm really excited to continue covering this team here on Locked On Ravens. On the way out, hit the like and subscribe button in video form on YouTube. Follow along in audio form and subscribe as well. Of course, we'll be back here tomorrow talking more Ravens Steelers, talking more Ravens football, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.